Hello there, Lawrence Grayson back again for shortformvideo.com with another After Effects tutorial for you to have a go at. Now, as you can see from the preview, what we'll be creating today is what I've called an Aero compass, but after a quick online discussion with a chap called EdEditz, he pointed out that you'll never find anything like this on an aircraft. In fact, it's more like the ball compasses you'll find on a yacht or a boat. So after I had that chat with him, I decided that when I uploaded the project file to my website, shortformvideo.com, I'd add what they call an attitude indicator as well. So if you go to my website and download the project file, not only will you get the Aero compass, you'll also get the attitude indicator, and that's what they look like on the same dashboard together. I should also point out that the texture in the background is created in After Effects, but I'm not going to show you how to do that in this tutorial. But if you want to grab the project for this, you'll find the texture pack on my website as well, which contains 12 high-tech textures, including this one, both as a PNG high-definition file, but also as an accompanying After Effects CS5 file, so you can play with the settings and tweak it to suit your own needs. So that's enough chat, let's get started. First thing we're going to do is create a new composition, and I'll call it Inner Element. Now, as you can see, it's a non-standard project size. It's 1500 pixels wide, 750 pixels tall, and square pixels, whatever frame rate you're using, so 29.97 for NTSC or 25 for PAL, and whatever duration you want. So I've got it set to 30 seconds, and I'll just hit OK. First thing I'm going to do is create a black solid to fill up the background. I'll just hit OK. Now I'll hit Control and R to bring up the rulers, and we'll just drag in a couple of guidelines to make things a little bit easier. So I'll set the first one at the left hand edge of the frame, the second one at the right hand edge of the frame, and we'll just pop one in at 375, so that's halfway across the vertical. Once you've done that, just go to View and select Lock Guides, and that means I won't accidentally drag them out of place. Now go to your pen tool, make sure fill is switched off and stroke is set to solid color. Pick white as the stroke color and set the stroke width to 40 pixels. And with the pen tool, just click on the left hand edge of the screen and then go to the right hand edge of the screen, holding down Shift just to lock it to the horizontal, and click again, and when you release you'll create a straight white line across the center of the frame. Now twirl down the shape layer properties until you can find the stroke value, and where it says dashes, hit the plus sign twice to add both a dash and a gap, and you'll get the default settings, which as usual aren't quite what we're after. So leave the dash at 10, set the gap to 31.6, and we'll just set the offset to 4. Now the reason I've created an offset here is so that it cuts the first dash in half, but also leaves the last dash in half, so it overlaps. That means that when we take it to our next composition and add an effect to it, it'll wrap more effectively. Now just select shape 1 and hit Ctrl and D to duplicate it. Twirl down the stroke properties again, and we'll take the stroke width down to 10. Twirl down the dashes, and we'll just adjust the offset until the next dash of the dashes we just created are offset so they're perfectly in the middle, which in this case is 25 pixels. And as you can see, we've already created a nice simple measurement gauge across the middle. I just want the small dashes to be at the base of the large dashes, so twirl down the transform properties for shape 2, and we'll just drag the Y value down by 15 pixels just to line those shorter dashes up with the longer dashes. Next thing I want to do is add some text for north, east, west and south. Now you'll already know how to create text and resize text, so I'm not going to bore you to death with that. In fact, what I might just do is grab the text that I've already created in the previous project and paste that in. And we'll just nudge it so that it lines up nicely. Okay, so that's our inner gauge created. What I'm going to do now is select the inner element composition, hit Ctrl D and just duplicate it. Just tap return to rename it and we'll call it outer element. Double click on it to open it and we'll just pretty much undo everything we've just done except for the shape layer. Twirl down the shape properties, delete shape 2. Twirl down the stroke value for shape 1. Remove the dashes and we'll just take that down to a stroke width of 15. Tap the apostrophe key to bring up your title safe guide, so we just get a nice simple horizontal indication of where the middle is. Find your pen tool again, select a nice strong green for the colour for the stroke, leave fill unchecked. Pick a width of 15 so it matches up with the existing line that we've got, and we'll just click above the line, hold down shift to lock it to the vertical and click below the line. Looks like it didn't register the colour change, so I'll just set that back to green. A little bit off centre as well. So I'll just nudge that into the middle. Okay, so that's pretty much the hard work done. Now we can create a composition, which is the final compass comp. I'm going to be using the 720p preset that I normally use, which is 1280 by 720, 25 frames per second, and matching the existing composition length, which is 30 seconds, and just hit OK. Now you can bring the inner element that you just created in and put the outer element composition on top of it. I'm just going to turn off the visibility for the outer element for the moment so we can concentrate on the inner element. Go to your Effects and Presets panel and find CC Sphere. And we'll just drag that on to the inner element. Now the default settings are almost good enough for us to use. Just going to change the light settings a little bit. We'll leave the light color and light intensity as it is, but we'll set the light height to 100. And the light direction to 90. To 0. And because we're only interested in the outside of this sphere, we'll just set the render to outside only. Now you take the CC Sphere settings you just created, hit Ctrl and C to copy them, and we'll just paste them on the outer element as well. Turn the visibility back on, and you can see we're starting to get there a little bit. So the first thing we want to do is right click on the outer element and just hit Layer Styles and Drop Shadow. Now if I scroll in, you'll see that automatically gives us this slight drop shadow that suggests that the outer element is floating just a little bit above the inner element, which is pretty much what we're after. Once you've done that, you can hide the outer element again because we'll be focusing our attention on the inner element. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do with the inner element is right click, select Layer Styles and Inner Glow, and that'll bring up its default settings, which is kind of slightly yellowish outline. Twirl that down. In the color, you can pick anything you like here, but I like a kind of nice greenish blue, provides the right settings, and just hit OK. And I'm just going to bump up the size quite significantly. We'll take it to 50 for now. Now that's a bit extreme, but you can see what we're getting at. I may come back and tweak that a little bit later, maybe take the opacity down to 50%. Something else we're going to do is right click again, go to Layer Styles and select Gradient Overlay. Now right now that's obviously ruined everything, so just need to make a couple of changes. We'll set the style to reflected, and that'll give us that nice bright point over the middle of the sphere and darker points top and bottom. I'll select the blend mode to soft light. Okay, next step is to create a new solid. Set it to white We'll call it highlight. Just hit OK. Okay, once you've created your highlights layer, turn the visibility off so you can see what you're doing. Grab your ellipse tool, and making sure the highlights layer is still selected even though you can't see it, I want you to draw an ellipse over the top of the sphere. And we'll just select mask path and nudge it into place. And then we'll get the selection tool and just have a bit of a play with the nodes to flatten it out at the bottom and tighten it up at the top. Okay, I'll turn the highlight visibility back on so we can see what we're doing. Now you can see where we're going with this. We're essentially creating a fake glow on top of the sphere. But to really sell it, turn the feather to about 15 and the opacity, let's try 25%. And already that looks pretty good. Again, with the highlights layer selected and the ellipse tool, we're going to create another mask, this time down at the bottom. Another ellipse. This one's even darker, so we'll take the opacity right down to 15. And we'll feather this one by about 30. And there you have it. There's our partially convincing plastic sphere. So if I bring the outer element back on, you can see that we're pretty close. Now I think the inner glow is maybe a little bit overbaked, so I might just take the opacity of that down to about 25. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, now as I may have mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to use a predefined texture for this. So it's the non-slip 3 PNG texture file that you'll find in Texture Pack 1, which is available for download for free from my website. So we'll just drop that in the background. Now it's actually an HD texture, which is larger than the 720p preset, so I'll just scale that down to 67% to bring it in. Now we just need to build a frame for it to sit in, and you do that by creating a new shape layer. Select the rectangle tool, set the fill to a very dark grey, and turn the stroke off because we certainly don't want a green outline on it. And holding down Shift to lock it to a square, just going to draw a rough square shape on top of the compass. And twill down the transform properties because obviously I'm way off center there, and just set the position to 0, 0, and that'll square it up nicely in the center. Now right click on the shape layer, go to mask and select new mask to create obviously a new mask. Hit Ctrl T to bring up the transform properties for that mask. Now holding down Shift, we're going to rotate the mask by 45 degrees, and that, holding down Shift locks it to 45 degree increments, which is kind of handy, just to make this octagonal shape. Now we don't want it to be a perfect octagon like that, so find the mask properties of the shape layer, and we'll just increase the expansion of the mask by about 45, 46 pixels, and that just gives us those cropped corners that we're after. Okay, next step, find your ever faithful fractal noise, drop that onto the shape layer. We're just going to give it a quick brushed metal effect. Drill down the transform properties, uncheck uniform scaling, set the width to about 2000, the height to about 2, and we'll just pull the opacity down until it looks how we want it to look. So in this case we'll probably be looking at about 7%. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now you'll find that because it's a shape layer, the shape tools default to creating shapes, so you can't really use them for creating masks quite as easily you would do otherwise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the mask that we've just created, twill down the properties and click on the shape link, and we'll reset it to an ellipse. And because it's actually a square shape, we'll get a perfect circle. And what we're going to do now is turn the visibility back on for this shape. We'll set the mask 2 value to subtract, and we'll drag the mask expansion value in. Just zoom in so you can see it a little bit more clearly until it matches the edge of our sphere. You can overlap it by a couple of pixels, it doesn't really matter, so let's set it to 199. And the final trick for this is to right click, go to Layer Styles and select Bevel and Emboss. Now you can be pretty aggressive with the bevel and emboss settings. We're going for Chisel Hard, and we'll set the size to 15. And it'll give us our instrument panel effect. Now you can also right click on this, go to Layer Styles and add a default drop shadow, just to set it a little bit more, make it look as if it's sitting above the panel underneath. Okay, now really we're on the home stretch. We just need to create some screws here. So what I'm going to do is create another new composition. We'll set it to 50 pixels by 50 pixels. We'll call this screw. I'll zoom in. Make sure the fill color is set to that same dark grey and stroke is still turned off, and just double click the ellipse tool to create a shape layer with a default circle in the middle of it. Right click on that shape layer, select Bevel and Emboss, twill down the Bevel and Emboss, and we'll set it to Chisel Hard again. Might just add stroke for the outline. We'll set that to medium grey, take it down to 1 and set it to inside. Brighten it up just a little bit. I'm going to create another new shape layer. This time I'm going to select the star tool and double click on that to create a default polystar on the new shape layer. Tool down the polystar properties, and we're just going to drop down the outer radius to about 17 and increase the points to about 6, and that'll give us that Torx screw head effect. Right click on shape layer 2, go back to Bevel and Emboss, and in the settings set it to down. So back in our final compass comp, we'll bring in the screw and we'll just nudge that layer into place. That looks about right. Right click, go to Layer Styles, Bevel and Emboss, and this time we'll be looking at outer bevel, and we'll set it to down, and that'll give you that countersunk effect for your screw head. So once you've done that, you can duplicate the screw, and we'll just move the duplicates into the right place. Okay, so we're almost there. The only thing left to do is to animate it, because at the moment this is all very nice, but it doesn't actually move at all, and this is motion graphics after all. And to do that, you simply go to the CC Sphere component of your inner element and twill down the rotation values, and we'll just create a keyframe for the X, Y and Z rotation values at the beginning of the timeline, and we'll just make some random adjustments. And create some keyframes. Well, he's really under control now. settle these back to 0. That'll comfortably loop. So if I just select the inner element and tap U, you can see that I've created this group of keyframes. Now you can obviously offset them, they don't all need to be moving in the same place. Because the motion of the compass is fairly smooth, you'll want to select all the keyframes. Just go to your keyframe assistant and select Easy Ease, and that'll just soften up all the changes in directions, give it a more natural look. Now about the final thing you want to do with this this composition is create a new adjustment layer, and we'll call this Motion Blur. I'll just drag it down through the group until it sits on top of the inner element. And in your Effects and Presets panel, find the CC Force Motion Blur and just apply that to your Motion Blur adjustment layer. Now, Motion Blur is a very processor hungry setting, so it's one of those things a little bit like depth of field and lens blur. It's one of those things you apply at the end. But what this will do, as you can see, if I just toggle it on and off, it'll add that motion blur. It'll just soften off and give it a more realistic move. So there you have it. That's another After Effects tutorial wrapped up. I hope you found it useful. Don't forget the project file, including the attitude indicator, is already up on my website, ready for download for free, as is the texture pack that I got the background texture from. So thanks for watching, hope you found it useful, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.